Yeah, this is episode 1. This is kind of me just kind of talking about my background, my life, and yeah, maybe I should put this at the beginning, but I don't want to do too much editing on this. Like, I want this to be like just the real me, like my thoughts and my real reactions, so that you guys kind of get to know me, but also so that I can reflect on where I'm coming from. Hi, my name's Josh, and right now I am sitting in the closet space of my 1-bedroom apartment. It's the transition between the bedroom and the bathroom behind me. But I'm going to be recording my videos here from now on until I reach 1,000 subscribers. And the reason why I'm setting myself that limit is because this is going to be like kind of a transition from beginner to intermediate once I hit 1,000 subscribers. And it's kind of like a reward for me, in a sense. There's nothing glamorous about recording myself in this space. And so I want the reward for garnering that kind of attention just based on this space. You know, no special lighting or anything like that other than what's coming in from the window. Based on my merit, based on what I talk about, based on the things that hopefully you guys will connect with. But the main thing about what I'm doing here is really for me to be able to reflect on my journey. And let me talk about that. What is this journey that I'm on? This journey is all about getting my coaching business off the ground. That's what this is about. And I'll probably lose a bunch of you just saying that. But, and the reason why is because this is a market that I think most people will agree is saturated. You know, it's overfilled. But regardless of that, I 100% believe in what I'm trying to achieve with my particular coaching business, and there's no telling where this will lead in the future. Like right now, it could be my focus is on the coaching business, but later on it could turn into speaking gigs, it could turn into TED Talks, it could turn into something much larger than what I'm currently imagining. And what I'm currently imagining is still pretty big because I'm looking to make an impact. All I'm ever going to have here, none of this is scripted. All I'm ever going to have here is my notebook, because I write every single day. I've been doing this. I started writing about 3 years ago, and I kept on track writing every single day about my experiences, what I was going through. And then my son was born last year, and that kind of fell off, but I picked it back up again. I was on and off, but I picked it back up again recently, maybe like 3 weeks ago. And you can probably see it, like I'm writing every single day, like just notes of ideas that pop into my head. And what I want to do is I want to post here on YouTube at least once a week, just talking about my past week's experiences. And being that this is the intro video, I will likely keep this more brief than future videos. And so with that being said, I want to introduce myself. So who am I? That's a loaded question. I mean, that's so hard to answer in, you know, like off the cuff. Like, and I don't have anything prepared. So like when I say who am I, the thing that comes to mind is defining myself by what I say and what I do. And what I say and what I do is guided by a set of core values. I determined, or I found, kind of worked through what my core values were last year. And doing that kind of made a huge difference in my life in terms of guiding me in a specific direction, in terms of being able to make better decisions for myself, aligning what I envisioned for my future with the actions that I take on a daily basis. So, who am I? I'm someone who believes in health, family, growth, impact, and integrity. And then I have another two kind of offshoot core values, an additional two, which is service and humility. Because I'm always learning from other people. I'm constantly doing outreach, and I don't care who you are, there's always something I can learn from you. Regardless of your background, regardless of anything that has to do with your level of intelligence or any of that, there's always something that you can learn from someone else. Where do I go from here? Well, let me turn to my notebook. So for this first episode, I wanted to talk about, since this is going to be a catalog of my honest and like raw, vulnerable experiences with starting a business, one of the things I have to get out of the way is I don't believe, like, I'm someone of average intelligence, and you might have other opinions of that the more you get to see my videos, but I don't want you to use that as a means to put yourself down. And what I mean by that is, like, if you watch me, and you know, I'm not the best at communicating, I'm trying to improve my communication skills, but if you watch this and you say, man, if he thinks he's of average intelligence, what does that say about me? No, don't use it like that, okay? I don't want you to use it like that. What I'm saying is, if at some point in the future I'm at a level of success that you guys look up to, I don't want you to be like, oh, well, he's smart, you know, like he had above average intelligence, so it's no wonder like he found that success. No, I'll get into it, but I'm figuring things out at a pace that I feel is way too slow, and it's hurting me and my family. It's not hurting us, right? Like, we're okay. But what I'm trying to say is, like, we're getting to a point where I'm going to need to start looking for a part-time job because I don't have any income coming in right now. And that's the reality of a lot of people starting out, especially, it doesn't matter like what kind of business you're starting, like the first couple of years is likely your profit is zero, probably, because you're reinvesting in yourself, you're paying yourself, you're paying for rent, a mortgage, you're supporting a family. Like, all the money goes to like getting that stuff taken care of, and then your business probably comes last. So I know it's going to take me a while to grow. I know that, and that's okay. If this took me 10 years to figure out and then I exponentially grew from there, it would be worth it, because I believe in what I'm doing here. I believe that the impact that I'm going to have is going to make a difference eventually. But I need a way to communicate my ideas, and I need a way to look back on where my journey began. And I wouldn't quite say it's beginning here. Like, I'm probably like a little bit into the beginning, but it's still very much early on. And so I need a way to kind of reflect on my learnings, the things that are affecting me on a day-to-day basis, the lessons I'm learning, especially for you guys if you're thinking about starting a coaching business. But yeah, I'm not going to edit this at all. I want this to be as authentic, that word. Authentic to me just means that I'm doing what I say and what I do is a reflection of what I believe. And what I believe are the core values. So in that sense, like, I want this to be, and I mentioned that before, like a very raw and real account of what I'm going through. So that being said, we're at 10 minutes in. That being said, I want to start off with what I was doing before I started this coaching business and why I left. So this kind of requires a little bit of context. So this is going to be a little bit of a story. Growing up was a challenge. When I was 6 years old, my parents divorced. And that experience kind of forced me to grow up fast. I had a little sister. My dad was an alcoholic, and my mom worked full time. We saw my dad on the weekends, but we didn't really go to see him. We really went to his place to hang out with our cousins and stuff, because he wasn't really there, if you know what I mean. And then when we were at my mom's, she was basically working all the time. We saw her a little bit in the morning, and we saw her a little bit in the evening. And in the evenings, she was usually highly stressed and anxious because she worked a customer service job, and dealing with the public for her was frustrating. And a lot of the times she would take out her anger on us, me and my sister. While we lived with my mom, she didn't allow us to go outside because it was too dangerous, she would say. So we were always indoors. Other than, besides school, we were at home. And I felt largely responsible for my sister. And I had this conversation about a few weeks ago with a friend of mine. We grabbed a couple of beers. And he had asked me, like, Josh, where did you get your sense of justice? Where did you get your sense of morality, right and wrong? Doing the right thing. Where did that come from? And I sat there and thought about it for a while. And the only thing that we could come up with was that this kind of forced responsibility on me to, like, perceived responsibility to take care of my sister was what really was really like the foundation upon which I felt a sense of, like, to be the protector. And this would kind of manifest as I got older. When I would play video games, I would always choose the warrior class or the defender class. And any time that I was on, like, a main quest and a side quest would pop up to help somebody, there's always side quests to help people. I couldn't help but take every single side quest possible and help every single person that needed help. That was just kind of who I was. And that stuck with me as I got older. It would come to bite me in the ass later, but that's a story for another time. So, yeah, growing up was tough. When I hit middle school, I got terrible acne, and I kept to myself for the most part. So I was this smart kid who got straight A's and kept to myself, just basically stayed home, played video games, and did my homework. School wasn't challenging for me. Like, school was pretty easy to get by. Even like when I got to high school, like the advanced placement courses, like all of those, like, aced. I never felt like I fit in. I always felt as though I didn't belong. And I think part of that was a function of the kind of forced responsibility on me to have to take care of my sister. And you can ask her, like, she will tell you that I had a huge role in raising, like, who she is now. And yeah, this sense of belonging, like, I was missing it. And I think that's part of the reason why I was always so so quick to help people, because I didn't want people to feel the way that I had felt kind of growing up through middle school, high school. College was different. So this kind of leads into, what I was doing before I got into coaching. So elementary school, middle school, high school, they have these like career aptitude tests. And every time I took that test, I always got the same profession, which was crazy to me because they were completely different aptitude tests. So what the profession was architect. And I thought that sounded cool. Like, yeah, being an architect, like I love to draw. Like drawing was one thing that I loved to do growing up. And so, my simple child mind back then was like, yeah, I draw well, so I could be an architect. And then I think the thing that kind of solidified me pursuing that path, and this plays into, psychologically me not feeling like I belong, was when I mentioned this to other people, like acquaintances at school, they would be like, whoa, that's so cool. Like, if you were an architect, you'd be the coolest kid ever, or like you'd be the coolest person ever. And that sat deep with me because it made me feel, if I had a profession that people respected, that people liked, then maybe I could feel like I belong. And I think, I didn't realize this until recently, thinking about, and when I say recently, within the last couple of years, when I wanted to like transition into something else, pivot into something else, because the longer I stayed in architecture, the more I didn't like it. And this idea, this external validation is really what played my part in sticking with it. And so, college was different. College, my acne had cleared, and I chose to take on a new identity. I became more outgoing. I made some great friends. But there was a mistake that I made. And I'll talk about it. I'm going to try and limit this video to be 30 minutes. So my third year of architecture school, I studied abroad and I met someone there. And she, at the time, was like the most outgoing person I'd ever met. But she lived in Taiwan. That didn't stop me from pursuing her. We ended up getting together while I was there. I was there for 6 months. And I think by the third month we were together. And leaving was like the hardest thing I had experienced up to that point because I had never been in a relationship prior to that. I hadn't been in a serious relationship. I didn't mention that in high school, my junior year, I got cheated on. I did have a girlfriend. She was in my Spanish class, and she was in flag, and that's like the girls that like they spin the flags for band. Like if there's the band marching, they're the ones with the flags behind them. So yeah, I got together with her, and then she cheated on me with a friend that I had, or like an acquaintance that I had in middle school. And he had been in juvie like throughout the first 3 years of our high school. So he came out of juvie. I introduced him to my girlfriend in high school, and then they got like she cheated on me with him. And her friends were the ones that told me because they liked me more than him. Yeah, so now fast forward back to back to college. Yeah, so I had this long distance relationship, and we were together for 2 years. My senior year, not senior year, my 5th year, because it's a 5-year program, my 5th year of architecture school, I cheated on her with my best friend here in the States. And that experience completely broke me. It shattered everything I held, the standard that I held myself to. the morality, the justice, the loyalty, the trustworthiness, all of that was destroyed by making this one mistake. And I lost all sense of who I was after that. I failed all of my classes. I felt like a failure in every sense of the word. I failed as a boyfriend, a friend, a son, a brother, a student, you name it. Like, I felt like a failure in any way that you can think of a failure. And that kind of sent me into a 5 to 6 year long period of severe depression and anxiety. And this was from like my early 20s to like my mid to late 20s. So during that time, I was working architecture jobs, and they weren't the best jobs. I mean, like, I had this one that was like 2.5 years long, where I was working at more as like an independent contractor, where the architect of the firm was paying me under the table, and I was gaining a ton of experience because it was a small firm, and I had many hats to wear in the company. So I got a ton of experience doing that job. And then eventually, when I got to a point where I was kind of done like punishing myself for what I had done like years prior, which was the cheating, I left that small firm and joined a large corporate firm. And I was there for 8 years. And something happened while I was there that completely broke my belief system. And what I mean by that is I always thought, kind of based on like what I knew about society's standards of living, is, you go to college, get a degree, get a good job, work your way up the corporate ladder, and hopefully retire when you're 65 or 67, whatever the age is. That was the path that I was on. That's all I knew. That's what I thought everyone was doing. That's what I thought a normal life was. But I think kind of deep down inside, part of me felt like I was meant for something more, like I was meant for something greater. But I never acted on it because I had always tried to play it safe. I had always tried to be the person that other people can depend on and that other people liked. And so like I did things to garner like, people's likes. And that meant playing it safe, staying within my comfort zone. In 2021, and this was after, like I haven't even touched on the hard money lessons that I've had to learn throughout life, but at one point I was over $30,000 in debt, and thankfully, like I can say today that debt has been eliminated completely, because I decided to make a choice about my money management. And that choice is what really I think is going to help me, especially when it comes to the finances in my business. I'm much more, I guess, I'm steps ahead than someone who doesn't kind of quite understand like the taxes and the different buckets that you have in a business that you should be, putting money into. But in 2021, the thing that happened was GameStop, that video game retail company. I invested in GameStop before what's called the short squeeze happened. And at that time, I saw my investment account break the 6-figure mark. And at the time, I wasn't even making six figures yet. I saw my account break the six-figure mark, and it had been building up. Like, that was over the course of like 3 weeks that I saw it kind of build up and surpass the six-figure mark. And then within just a few days of like extreme volatility in the market, I lost it. I almost lost it all. Like, I still came out on top, you know, I still ended up profiting and paying down some debt, but the vast majority of it disappeared within a few days. And the excitement from that event, like, I still remember it. Like, I would have dreams of like piles of cash. I would have dreams of like, you know, looking at my phone and seeing the millions of dollars in my account. Oh man. But yeah, that event, it broke my belief system in terms of what's possible. It got me to get curious about ways that I could do that for myself through businesses. And then that's kind of what really piqued my interest into entrepreneurship. I started educating myself on financial literacy, mindset, personal development, like different, I read different business books. I went into like this whole like growth mode, basically. When prior to that, like, I don't think I'd read a book since college, which was 2006 to 2011. And it blew my mind over the course of, you know, those few years from 2021 basically to 2024. It blew my mind that all these years felt like a waste because there's so much knowledge out there. Like, we live in a time where we have the most access to the most information that could completely change our lives if we just sat down, made a plan, focused, figured things out as we went. We could completely change our lives within the course of a year. I have no doubts. Within the course of a year, if you really focused and worked at something consistently for a year, your life would be different. And that was kind of like the realization that I was coming to. But I was just consuming information. I was still playing it safe. I was consuming all of the information. Like the three main areas that I kind of determined were like the most important in terms of eventually putting things into action was self-management, knowledge management, and money management. Those three things, and those are very broad categories, right? Self-management, money management, self-management, knowledge management, and money management. Extremely broad areas, and that was kind of what I wanted to talk about primarily on this YouTube channel. I fell off of that, but I'm back now. But that experience with GameStop, let me come back to it. That experience with GameStop opened up my eyes to what was possible. And that's what really led into the reflection on whether or not I was actually enjoying what I was doing. And it made me reflect on why I was doing architecture in the first place. And then that's when I came to the realization, like, wow, I was doing this because I thought, you know, it was a career that people respected. And I think, you know, to some degree, people who are not in architecture, they respect architects, but they have no idea what kind of it involves. It's kind of glamorized by movies and television. But one of the things I will tell you is that I'm not particularly proud of where I got in. If you were to look at architecture, like the career as a corporate ladder, I was probably like in the bottom, like third or fourth rung. Like I didn't get very high, and that was a function of changing like niches, I guess you could say. Because there's like civic architecture, there's schools, there's museums, there's apartment buildings, there's single family homes, there's different disciplines within architecture, and I kind of would bounce between different ones. And so I never really, you really have to stick to one to make it up the corporate ladder, and I didn't make it very far. So I was extremely dissatisfied, one, with just my professional life in general, and then two, I had become like the go-to person for the technology that we used to digitally design the buildings. That corporate firm that I worked for, like I was one of maybe 2 or 3 people that I felt had the same ability that we had in understanding how the program works and how to build large scale projects within that technology quickly. And then I got pigeonholed. I got kind of trapped in that role because they couldn't afford to move me anywhere else because nobody else was as good as I was in that one thing. But that kept me down at the bottom rung of that ladder. And on top of that, even if I looked up the rungs of the different ladder, the higher up I looked, the more stress and anxiety and time that you had to dedicate to your role, within that profession. That wasn't appealing to me. Like, why would I want to, just because they offer more money doesn't mean I'm willing to take on, more stress, trade more of my time. Like, it really required dedication, like a level of dedication that didn't appeal to me because it wasn't what aligned with my values. This is what I would find out later, but it didn't align with what I thought would make a meaningful impact on the world. What I felt like I was doing at the time was putting more money in the pockets of extremely greedy developers. We were doing these cookie cutter projects, and they would be really cool in the beginning, but eventually they would strip away all of the things that were nice about these buildings, and then you're left with these very basic low quality materials, the very cheapest possible option that you could have for a product. And then they charge the tenants an arm and a leg, right? You guys all know how crazy rents are across this country. And I just couldn't, the longer I stayed, the more dissatisfied with my professional life I was. And that was starting to manifest in stress and coming home to my wife, she could tell I was unhappy. And so the thing that I thought to do was to just switch firms. Maybe I needed a new change of scenery, stay within the same industry, but just change my environment. And that actually made things worse. It made things worse because I entered an environment that was now toxic. And I lasted in that new job for about 6 months, and then I quit. And that was when I decided, okay, I need to go all in on this coaching thing. But yeah, man, I don't even know. There's still more I'm missing, but I tried, while I was in architecture, I tried multiple online businesses at the advice of gurus that I found that say oh, you can make money so quickly and so fast. And so over the years, between 2022 and 2024, after the GameStop thing, I was still money hungry, and I was chasing trying to make money fast. And so I tried like affiliate marketing, I tried blogging, I tried print on demand, e-commerce, multiple e-commerce stores, and nothing was, I had no experience in marketing. I had no experience in sales, in lead gen, and any of that stuff. And when I didn't see the results quick enough, I would quit. And what I had to come to terms with is that I needed a real problem to solve that mattered to me. And that's what really led me to the coaching space. And so I thought to myself, like, what problems could I solve? What is my vision for my business that would allow me to persist through the challenges that will inevitably come up? Because, I feel like not enough people know this, but if you don't care enough about what you're doing, the likelihood of you quitting is much higher than someone who has this relentless belief that what they're doing is important. That's an essential piece that a lot of starting entrepreneurs miss. And why Alex Hormozy talks about this, but there's this cycle that people stay trapped in, and it's like, I'll probably share the image on the screen for you guys, but it's this like emotional cycle that we go through, and people can get trapped in like the first few steps of that cycle and just like repeat that over and over for years. And it's not until you push through like the part that really makes you want to quit, that you eventually like come out the other side. I have to end it here because I think my wife is going to be home soon, but I'm going to continue this next time with, let's see, my coaching vision and who I want to help. I'm going to talk about the biggest challenges that I've come up against while I've been doing this, and that's going to be one of the main things that I talk about here, is like the struggles that I'm going through, and just giving you guys like real, honest, and again, like, this is more for me. I don't expect anyone to watch this, probably until I've become big enough to where people are just curious. But yeah, I'll talk about my challenges quite often here, and lessons that I've learned, and ways that I'm learning to deal with these challenges that keep coming up. And then I'll talk about some wins that I've had, and then just goals in general. Like, I don't like to talk about goals, actually. I like to talk objectives, and the difference there, just really quickly, between goals and objectives. A goal is like an outcome you're looking forward to. And the reason why I really don't like goals is because people often tell themselves, I won't be happy until I reach that goal, until I reach that outcome. And then that outcome comes, like they reach their goal, and then realize that that's not really what they were looking for. And they didn't pay attention, or as close attention as they should have, to the journey. And so for me, a big part of what I'm doing, like the process of learning, of taking on these challenges, that's all fun for me. I enjoy putting together this puzzle that is a business, and it's going to require me to learn things from the start, because everything I'm starting was from zero. Like, I had no marketing experience, like I mentioned before, no sales experience, no lead gen experience. I had no coaching experience. And so that's going to play a big role in my ability to learn things. And I don't learn things the quickest way. That's why I say I'm of average intelligence. But I have exceptional belief in myself and my abilities. And that's one of the things that I can use to my advantage, because, and then the thing that I mentioned about that missing piece of caring about what you're doing, like knowing that it matters to you. I think that's like those ingredients like almost make success inevitable. Like they guarantee success as long as you continue to stick with it. And that's one thing I'm going to do with this. I'm going to stick with it. I don't care how long it takes. My wife might say otherwise, but I'm going to be looking for a part-time job here soon to bring in a little bit of additional income, so that we're not as uncomfortable as we could be in like 4 or 5 months when our like finances kind of dwindle down. I'll get into more of that in probably the next episode, or if not, definitely a future episode. But I'll see you guys next time.